which is Data and AI Forum comes to you. So today we're going to review the highlights from Data and AI Forum. My name's Greta Brower. I oversee the delivery of our services here at PM Square. And today I'm going to be serving as your webinar MC and also presenting some conference buzz and also a few technical highlights from the event. Also with me today is Paul Mendelson, aka Cognos Paul, who you may know from his Cognos blog and is also one of our senior solution architects. Okay, so our agenda for the presentation today, first we're going to talk a little bit about the conference itself, some of the buzz that we heard and some new programs that IBM's rolling out. Then we'll move into technical highlights. The three areas we're going to focus on are data modules versus framework manager and when to use each, and kind of the resounding recommendation coming out of the conference. Then we will be sharing some new AI features within Cognos Analytics. And then Cognos Paul is going to share some upcoming Cognos Analytics roadmap features. If you have questions throughout the webinar, please submit them through the GoToWebinar pane on the right side of the window. We'll answer them at the end of the webinar. And then if there's any that we don't get to, we will note those and email the full list of questions and answers out after the webinar concludes. Okay, so a couple quick comments about who we are before we jump in. PM Square is a gold IBM partner. We're focused on the data science and AI portfolio, so products like Cognos Analytics and Planning Analytics roll into this area as well. And what this means is that we assist customers with all of their analytics initiatives, things like modernization, upgrading to the latest versions from both a technical and a user adoption or change management perspective. We also specialize in training, both on the delivery and strategy side of that, and we do a lot of assessments, things like health checks, environment tuning, performance tuning, and so on. And we have quite the team of consultants, people like we have today on the webinar, Cognos Paul, who's basically an IBM celebrity at this point. We also have our managing partner, who's the author of the leading book on Cognos Analytics. We've got, I think, at this point, 4 IBM champions on staff and all around a great team. So of course, reach out to us if you need any help on that front. I also want to mention that in addition to services, we also have products, one of which is Thrive, which can make recommendations on how to improve your Cognos environment and increase user adoption in a very proactive way. And we can also do things like help you with your IBM license management. So with that said, let's jump into our content for today. So we're going to start with just some general conference buzz. So PM Square was a platinum sponsor again this year at Data and AI Forum. The event was hosted at the same location as last year, the Intercontinental Hotel in Miami. And just a couple notes about the conference itself. The venue setup worked out really well. If you haven't been before, it's much more of an intimate kind of experience than something like IBM Think. But definitely this year there were more attendees than past events like Analytics University is what it was called in years past. So the content of the event is focused entirely on Cognos Analytics, Planning Analytics, and the rest of the data science and AI portfolio. So that's right up our alley and also most of our customers' alley. And this included presentations on things like customer success stories, IBM sessions, hands-on workshops. There were a lot of good opportunities to network with partners and other customers. And most of all, one thing that we all think is kind of impressive is that the IBM product team and the DSAI leadership team was very readily available to talk to between sessions and things like that and set up meetings. So on the slide, I just have a little collage of some photos that we snapped. We hosted a rooftop reception one night. We've got the PM Square team members that were in attendance, our booth set up. You'll notice that we went with a Miami Vice neon-themed logo. And all in all, it was just a really fun and educational event. And the feedback was really positive, that it was worth all of the attendees' time. So if you didn't attend this year, maybe consider attending next year. Another thing I wanted to highlight were the sessions that we presented. So we had 3 sessions this year. On the first day of the sessions, Tuesday, we had How to Be an Analytics Changemaker that was presented by our Senior Solutions Architect and Product Manager, Ryan Dolly, with some secrets on how to develop and execute rollout strategies to maximize user adoption. That was a big hit. We also hosted a data modules versus framework manager session, and I'm going to present kind of a condensed version of that today. And then we also had a customer success story partnering with our customer Alliant Energy on how they're modernizing their BI practice to enable enterprise reporting, along with self-service to bring modern analytics to their business users. So if you're interested in learning more about any of the topics that we presented on or getting the presentation materials, please do reach out and we can connect you with that. Okay, another thing that came up during the conference is that there's been a new community site that's been announced. And honestly, I was a little skeptical when I heard about this because it seems like every year or two they're launching some new community site or collaboration site, which has kind of just spread out the information that many of us care about across multiple websites. But this time there is a real effort to consolidate those sites and combine them into one master kind of landing zone so we can all find what we're looking for. And this new community site, it's already live and it's really easily accessible at ibm.com/community. And then from there, you can navigate to the kind of topic area that you're most interested in. If you're on this webinar, it's likely business analytics. So I kind of highlighted where you would click once you get through the landing page, or maybe data science, which is to the right. And you can navigate to that subsite. And then within there, there are several focus areas that I've listed on the slide here, but I also wanted to highlight a couple key items, one of which is group discussions, which I know has existed in the past, but there's this new kind of consolidated message board that seems to be getting a lot of traction, especially on some of the newer features of people asking questions and collaborating there. So that's definitely something to check out. Also, local groups. So there's now one place to find information and updates related to your user group meetings. So definitely go out there and join your local user group. And if you don't see it, connect with your local user group leader or president and have them create the group out there on the community site if it's not already there. There's also a consolidated listing of webinars and in-person events. For example, the upcoming Chicago Analytics Roadshow information is all out there with links to register. And in the past, this stuff has been spread out over multiple sites, so it's kind of a good one-stop shop for events. And then also for feedback and product updates, there's now a consolidated set of links to submit product feedback and also the new RFP process through the AHA page. And you can also vote on other ideas that other members have submitted. So I'd encourage you to check it out. The login uses your IBM ID, so it's really easy to log in, not a new account. And yeah, check that out. And then one other thing that was listed on the previous side that I wanted to highlight a bit more is the new Analytics Hero program. This is a new program to increase the business analytics community engagement and improve marketing and awareness of the Cognos Analytics and Planning Analytics products. And to do this, IBM wants to find what they're calling heroes out in the market. So the persona of an analytics hero is that kind of they're involved in their organization to drive analytics tool adoption. They leverage Cognos or Planning Analytics as a tool in their daily activities. So whether these people actually sit in marketing or operations or finance or even IT or the BI team, you know, analytics heroes have a big impact on driving their business analytics initiatives forward. So IBM wants to kind of bring these people into the inner circle to tell their story, to provide feedback, and to participate in various activities. So if this sounds like you or maybe someone else in your organization, we can help you apply for being an analytics hero. So connect with us and we can inform you about the application process. And this not only kind of acts as a resume builder for you, which has some value, but it also keeps you in the loop on upcoming information and gets you other benefits like allowing you to connect with other heroes and get invited to IBM events. So let us know if you're interested in that and we can get you more information. All right, so jumping into some of the technical highlights, the first area that I'm going to touch on is data modules versus framework manager. So one big topic, as I think I originally mentioned at the conference, that both we and others, including IBM themselves, presented on is when to use data modules, what's the appropriate time to use data modules compared to when to use framework manager, and when can they possibly replace framework manager. And there was a pretty clear consensus on the answer to that question, actually. But first, not to leave you hanging, I just want to reiterate what data modules are today in terms of features and what they are not and what they can and cannot do today. So data modules are Cognos's web-based data modeling tool that can pull in data from data server connections, uploaded files, framework manager models, packages, and data sets, meaning previously uploaded files or other existing data modules. So multiple sources can be combined into a single data module. And data modules and framework manager have a lot in common. Both are relatively easy to install and manage. In the case of data modules, there isn't even an install, it just comes out of the box. Both are equipped to allow you to join dozens or even potentially hundreds of tables across multiple databases. They can both execute cross-grain fact queries through determinants or a similar feature in data modules. They can incorporate calculations, filters. You can build aliases, views, unions. You can join virtual tables. There are aspects of security. And both can be used to create hierarchies in one way or another. So they're in some ways very similar, but data modules have some newer type of features that are above and beyond what Framework Manager offers and are being enhanced in each release. So some of the data manager only features include the ability for natural language and AI-powered auto modeling, which is really exciting. There's also automatic join detection. You can easily integrate Excel data directly, as well as easily clean your data. And then there's also navigation path definition, not just up and down hierarchies, but across them. And there's a lot of new features related to defining time elements. So automatic extraction of year, month, or day from a date data type, which they call a date split. There's also automatic creation of relative time filters and automatic creation of relative time measures, like year-to-date actual, month-to-date actual. And finally, data modules provide some in-memory materialized view and in-memory query caching. So those are a bit of the similarities and differences. The ways that data modules fall behind a bit compared to Framework Manager I have listed out on the screen. And for some of these items, there are a bit of workaround, but in the traditional sense, this is what's missing: object level security, dimensionally modeled relational capabilities, param mapping, and then also multiple connections for a single data server. Like for example, if you've got a dev test prod option for a SQL Server database connection, you can create those multiple connections, but it can't dynamically switch between them if a user only has security for one of them, for example. So some of these items are being worked on and incorporated in future releases. For example, dimensional capabilities we've heard may be added in coming releases. So stay tuned for that. And then finally, now that we've kind of compared the capabilities, I want to share who data modules were sort of designed for. There's been a little bit of a debate about who should get access to use data modules, and we'll get into that with our overall recommendation, how to use them moving forward. But there's kind of two ends of the spectrum that can use data modules, and everyone that falls in between, like power users or BI team members and so on. But on one side, we've got the business user, And for the business user, data modules are ideal for somebody who wants to quickly combine enterprise data along with departmental data or Excel spreadsheets. And they really don't have the time to wait for IT to build a framework manager package or a cube for them. Because the interface is really clean and easy to use, and there's ease of creating custom groups and building out relative time, like I mentioned, it's the ideal place for them to combine data, even easier than Excel in some cases. And then on the far other side of the spectrum, we've got the traditional Cognos Pro. And as of the 11.1 release, data modules have really reached feature parity with Framework Manager in most respects, aside from the items that I called out on the previous slide. And they've even surpassed Framework Manager in a lot of important modeling automation tasks, like relative time that I've mentioned a few times. And as an added bonus, it's really simple for the IT team to take something that was originally created for self-service by a business user, for example, and incorporate it into enterprise reporting without significant development work. So both ends of the spectrum and everyone in between, like a departmental admin, a power user, for example, have very clear use cases for when data modules might make sense. Which brings me to our recommendation. So the big question is, now that you know what data modules can and can't do and how they compare to Framework Manager, how do you know when you should use Framework Manager versus data modules? And in summary, the consensus and recommendation is basically always use data modules unless you cannot, because of the reasons mentioned. And to summarize, they're so much easier and faster to create. They've got a lot of new features like the relative time, the date column splitting, the custom grouping, all built right in. Data modules are the target of future development. Framework Manager isn't going anywhere, but they haven't and won't be making any enhancements to that product too much moving forward. And finally, they are really the key to unlocking the modern BI workflow of allowing your business users to do true self-service. And what I mean by that is that for so long, Cognos admins or BI teams have been extremely hesitant to open up data modeling to end users, even now that they have matured a bit. Because historically, Framework Manager has been relied on for things like data governance, and we've had this idea of one version of the truth and auditability being so important. But the reality in kind of the summary of what we've found is that our users are already doing self-service and combining enterprise data with their departmental data or other spreadsheets anyway. And if we enable them to use a tool like data modules, at least we have some level of oversight. And switching to a more collaborative approach in Cognos by rolling this out, we've found will really increase user satisfaction and also the perception of the tool across the organization. Whereas sticking with the traditional Framework Manager approach will ensure a single source of the truth, but it's also at a high cost. There's not going to be any new feature updates. We know that Framework Manager development has really long development cycles. And basically, we're driving users to these other platforms that continue the cycle of having no oversight and puts anything that they create outside of our ability to monitor or influence or help our users. So in summary, and kind of what we got into a lot more deeper at Data and AI Forum was you should roll out data modules. That's kind of the bottom line takeaway. And that point was given a lot of airtime at the conference. And I'm sure there are a lot of people out there with hesitation on this. So we would love to talk to you further if you have concerns and help you figure out a plan to get this rolled out. Okay, moving on. So next I'm going to get into some of the new AI features, particularly those that were announced in 11.1.3 and 11.1.4. Okay, so the first kind of new feature that I believe came out in 11.1.4 that was highlighted at the conference quite a bit is forecasting. So if you're looking at a time series analysis and dashboards, you can toggle on this new forecasting icon on the top right of the chart that I have circled up on the top right image there. And if it's not already, the really cool thing about toggling this on is that the chart will autocorrect to be in proper chronological order. So in the example I have on the screen here, it was in alphabetical order originally, even though on the x-axis there's a time series. So on the left, the chart was before forecasting was applied, and then on the right, it reorders when forecasting is applied. And you can see how it kind of has a little bit of a grayed out forecast out into the future there. And you can change settings like how many forecast periods you want to include. The automatic setting is, I think, 20% of the total. You can also tell it to ignore periods. Like, for example, if you've got a period in your data that hasn't fully completed and you want it to ignore it for forecasting purposes, it can do that. You can also choose whether to include or exclude seasonality, which it does automatically. When you toggle on forecasting, because it's a time series, it takes that into account. And then it also identifies a confidence level on the forecast itself that it makes. So this feature is available in dashboards for now. And if you're curious about, the details about what goes into the algorithm behind the forecast, there's documentation on the IBM site that explains exactly what it's doing behind the scenes. But this is pretty cool and easy to incorporate, just basically a switch of a button there. There's also a new feature called Insights. I believe this was originally released in maybe 11.1.3, but there have been recently some improvements. So average and highlighting of meaningful differences are some of the newer features that get applied when this insight icon is toggled on. And this is kind of like the forecasting button where it's just a toggle. And then the insights will automatically show average, which provides the mean of the target value. It will also show predictive strength of the relationship between the target and any other explanatory fields that you have in your chart. It will add a line of best fit, which shows the relationship that exists between the target and the explanatory fields. It will also highlight any meaningful differences that are significantly higher or lower than the average. And then it will also highlight the most frequent values that are reported. Another new AI feature that got a lot of airtime at the conference is within Explore, the key drivers analysis. So this brings, Explore in general was released originally in 11.1, and it brings automatic insights and some of the quicker, easier visualizations and natural language processing of what was once Watson Analytics into Cognos Analytics. But the biggest improvement is the key drivers analysis, which you can use on both continuous and categorical targets, and it's available in dashboards and explorations as of 11.1.3. So the driver analysis visualization, which is up here on the screen, it shows key drivers or predictors for a particular target. And the further on the visualization itself, the further a driver is to the right, the stronger that driver is or is a predictor of the target. So behind the scenes, this visualization uses algorithms, but through Cognos Analytics, we can use those without needing to know necessarily what statistical test to run or what model to apply. Cognos picks it automatically based on the data type, which is really cool. And then also accompanying this visualization is some natural language description that describes how what's going on in the visualization and some of the underlying insights. So once you've generated this analysis, you can export it into a dashboard as well if you want to, visualize it along with some other data. And the last AI feature improvement that I want to highlight is the AI assistant feature. In the last couple of releases of the product, there have been a lot of improvements in this area. You can launch the assistant from dashboards and explorations. And some of the new features are that it now understands what they call modifiers, which are things like aggregations and filters. So you can use words like total and average, max, min, top, bottom. You can apply filters and it will understand what you're saying. There's also a type ahead feature that as you're starting to type out questions, it will guide you. For example, if you start typing a data item name, it will kind of like auto-populate the rest of it and give you options for what you might be wanting to investigate. There's also suggestions that are provided that will recommend visualizations and will build you an entire fully populated dashboard. And that's what I've highlighted in the top right image. So there's a little link there that says create dashboard from charts. And basically, as you're chatting with the AI assistant, it figures out what data you most care about and based on your inquiries is most closely related and what you're finding interesting, and will automatically spin that up into a dashboard all on its own. And then from there, you can modify it further like you would any other dashboard, or you can save it off for future use. And then finally, there've been a few new keyboard shortcuts that have been incorporated. For example, a way to find your historical inquiries. Better context is being applied so that within the context of what you've already asked, it already pre-filters its recommendations and visualizations. So all of that's getting smarter and is very exciting. Okay, so up next we have some of the upcoming roadmap features that we heard at Forum, and I'm going to hand it over to Cognos Paul to walk us through these new features.
Thank you, Greta. My name is Cognos Paul, or Paul Mendelson, as I'm known to by my friends. So what I will be talking about are not predictions. These are things that IBM is working towards. IBM is somewhat notorious for teasing certain features that look very impressive, that everyone loves, but it never appears. So please take everything that you're about to see with a grain of salt. Next slide, please. With a small grain of salt. I was told that most of these will be in 1.5 or 1.6. But things may happen. They may discover that they don't want to put any of these in the future releases. Nobody can say for sure. So the first thing is better prompting. Next slide, please. Thank you. For as long as people have been using Cognos, people have been using various hacky JavaScript solutions to improve the usability of the prompts. In fact, the very first JavaScript that I wrote for Cognos was to make the radio prompts horizontal. Fortunately, it only took IBM about 10 years to catch up, and it will now natively support horizontal or vertical alignment orientation. But every single prompt object will also now have search options, including the tree prompts. This means IBM will go to your data source, grab all of the results, cache them locally, and allow the user to search the entire set. They did not go into how it would handle large data sets, unfortunately. The impression that I'm getting is it will intelligently decide when to cache and when to do a server request. But again, these are details, technical details that they never really got into. The new prompts will also have a number of other modern features. You will be able to collapse them. I know everyone loves how much room the search prompts take, but fortunately, you'll be able to make them really small, and the user can expand and contract them as they need. Value prompts will also have tags. So if you select 2 items, you'll see 2 tags appear above the prompt. Optionally, they can decide to remove them if they don't want to see those tags. There is a rumor that they will be adding the prompts to dashboards to make everything line up. Some people have, it's not 100%, as I said, but it's something that they're looking at doing. The next nice thing is all of these prompts will allow us to talk to the JavaScript objects on the page, including the new JavaScript list report. Sonia, could you go? Greta, could you go to the next page, please? Thank you. In 11.1, IBM released the JavaScript graphs. These are locally rendered, which means Cognos will go to the query, retrieve all of the results, and store them on the page and build the graph on the page. This is now happening with lists as well. This means that instead of rendering 1,000 rows of data on the server and sending all of that HTML to the page, the client will only receive a smaller JSON packet, and everything will build automatically from there. It will also include microcharts. They are for sure going to be including bar graphs, and I'm hoping that spark lines will also be included. But this also means that because the data is stored locally, when we select a value in the prompts, Cognos will not have to rerun the SQL, go back to the server, and regenerate everything. Instead, it will be able to interact directly with the local objects, the graphs, the lists, and filter them the same way that we could in active reports. They are going to be looking into setting up active report style connectors between the objects. So you should be able to click on a bar in a graph and have everything else on your page filter according to that. These are going to be especially useful for when you have smaller data sets. The larger data sets, again, might still need to go back to the server. This roundabout trip to the server is especially likely if you're going to do anything that changes the underlying SQL if you're using token prompts. Can you go to the next slide, please? And finally, we have schematics. Unfortunately, I was not able to find any saved presentation that had these images, so this is a snapshot from the conference itself. Schematics are any map that's not geographically based. So this includes seat maps, floor plans, warehouse maps, cubicle seating charts. The way it will work is the admin will upload SVG images of those maps as different layers, and they'll be able to define each individual point and area for the map. Once the map has been uploaded, the end user will see it as any other data container in Cognos. It will have the drop zones for the data items and interact exactly as any other map. And it should be quick and easy to implement. Unfortunately, they did not go into many more details besides that. And that's it for me, Greta.
Okay, thanks, Paul. So one thing I want to mention here before we let you all go. Oh, Paul, did you share about the social insights?
I did not.
There you go.
All right. The social insights are going to be, it's basically the Watson for social media that IBM had a few years ago. It will allow the user to create projects that will automatically search through, I think they said hundreds of thousands of blogs and forums, looking for specific keywords and focus items. It will then be able to create dashboards and reports based on the results that it picks up. Unfortunately, they, again, did not go into many technical details about how it works, so everything looks more or less like magic. Let's see. And yeah, that's it from me, unfortunately.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Paul. All right, we did have a couple questions come in, but before we get to that, I do just want to highlight one thing before we jump into that. We do on our events page have a lot of useful information. We've got training, we've got conference information, other webinars like this, and then also live events. For example, upcoming in December, the Chicago Business Analytics Roadshow that I mentioned earlier. If you're in the Chicago area, make sure to check that out. We will be there. And in general, also, we're running a Q4 training promotion that brings our one-day virtual training down from $6.99 to $5.99. There's a $100 off coupon highlighted on our website, so check that out if you're looking to use any of your training budget before the end of the year. And let's see, we've got a couple questions here. So the first one, will these lists be available for dashboards? I believe that is the list that Paul was sharing, asked by Miguel. Miguel, yes, they are available. And then there's another question here from Joshua. In Framework Manager today, I create global filters that appear in my framework package and can be used within reports. That allows me to update a filter in one spot instead of having to individually update a filter on multiple reports. Is this available in data modules? And the answer is that yes, global filters are available in data modules. So definitely check that out if you're looking to move in that direction. Let's see, we've got a couple other questions coming in here. Again, if you want to ask a question, use the pane on the right side and type it in the questions window. The IBM Cognos Analytics Social Insights, any license requirement? I am not sure about that. Paul, do you happen to know about the license requirement for Social Insights?
Unfortunately, no. The impression that I got is it will be embedded in the product. So if you can use it, if you have access to it, you'll be able to use it. Other than that, they didn't get into the licensing.
Okay, sounds good. We'll have to follow up on that. And like I mentioned before, we'll send out a list of all the questions that were asked along with the answers. Let's see. Is Jupyter Notebooks coming to Windows with the 11.1.5 release? Paul, do you happen to have an answer on that one? I know Jupyter Notebooks are already incorporated in one way or another, but I'm not sure with the specific question related to Windows if that has a different answer.
I did hear they were looking on getting it in Windows, but again, I haven't heard any firm dates.
Okay, so we'll have to follow up on that one too. There's another question, are shortcuts available in data modules like in Framework Manager? And I think what this person's asking is, I would guess, the links to be able to reference previously defined objects, kind of like with the layered approach that's used typically in Framework Manager, so you don't have to redefine things like that. And the way that that sort of works is with data modules, what you can do is set up links so that you can reference previously defined modules and then just make updates in one spot. The shortcuts aren't really necessary because the structure of data modules is different enough that it's not really required in the way that you typically set those up. So the short answer is kind of no, but they're not really necessary. And if for whatever reason you do kind of want to imitate that functionality, you can use the linked feature. All right, let's see if we have any other questions here. Does IBM have a way to use a REST-based link to be used as a data source, like what Power BI has? Paul, do you happen to
Yeah,
know that?
yes, you can use a web service as a data source. That's actually been around for a very long time. Uh, I would say follow up with me after the conference, and I'll be able to point you in the right direction.
All right, thanks, Paul. And one more question here. In which release is the social insights coming? We think that's either, like Paul mentioned, I think 11.1.5 or 11.1.6. Paul, do you happen to know or what you heard from the conference?
No, 1.6 at the latest is what I heard.
Okay. All right. So thanks everyone for joining. That's all the time we have for today. But thank you for tuning in, and we hope you have a great week.